your rule book right now.
Just make sure you don't.
Our work is with yeah, the negatives. Oh yeah, we got
We're
this.
against it. Well, no, we're for it. We just wanted to say that.
No one has arranged for it.
No, we want to draft.
Okay, like, you don't like him?
We want to draft.
All right.
I like it.
All right. Here, all right. Oh, you got your phone?
Hello everybody. This is our second debate for Challenge 1. The negative team is over here and they're going to introduce themselves. And the affirmative team, no.
They're affirmative, we're negative.
Okay,
What?
they're, no.
Okay, I'll take it from
Oh, right, yeah, we
alright.
are affirmative. Yeah, we are. No, just what's the word? That, put that as an A.
No, you guys are negative.
No, we're A1 too.
No, you're not. I mean, I'm ready for both sides.
Okay, sounds good. We'll see what everybody decides to do today and what I decided to pick out. So we'll see how that goes. Please again, turn off your phones if you do have any, or turn them down, and you guys are ready to go.
How many people come out with fluency or bottles? My name is Sarah Hawthorne, and I'm doing the cross and the NYC.
My name is Mason Shaver. I'm doing
I'm
college.
doing the NYC and the cross.
Hi, I'm Vic. I'm doing something with the AC.
No.
I'm Vic.
I think I'm doing the AC. Oh, you're a judge?
No.
Oh, Florida.
Okay. Are the judges ready? Timer ready?
Yes.
Opposing team ready? My name is Ryan Martin, and this is my partner, Victor Nascimento. On this day, both me and my partner stand against the resolution. The United States should reinstitute a mandatory military draft. Okay.
No, you guys are against
No,
the
yes, I know.
resolution.
Against the resolution, the United States should reinstitute a mandatory military draft. We are against that resolution. Of all the stated violations of individual rights in mixed economy, the military draft is the worst. It's an abrogation of rights. It negates man's fundamental right, the right to life, and establishes the fundamental principle of statism, that a man's life belongs to the state, and the state may claim it, compelling him to sacrifice it in battle. Once that principle is accepted, the rest is only a matter of time. Quote, Ayn Rand. Source, quotesayings.net. Observation 1 definitions. War, a state or period of fighting between states or nations. Source, Merriam-Webster.com. Draft, compulsory recruitment for military service. Source, Oxford Languages. Mandatory, required by law or rule. Source, Merriam-Webster.com. Observation 2, harms. Harm 1. It goes against the will of the people. A military draft requires people of a certain age to serve in the armed forces even if they don't want to do so. Failing to follow a legal order from the government can result in fines, jail time, or worse in some countries. Source, futureofworking.com. Harm 2. There will be many more casualties. The government demands that people risk their lives for a governmental cause. There is a risk that your life could be in danger for a military draft. In danger because of a military draft. This is why some individuals refuse to serve, even if that means that they go to prison for several years. Source, futureofworking.com. Harm 3, the cost. The cost of training a single service member is pretty high already. Spending tons of money training people who don't want to be there, only to have most of them leave the service as soon as humanly possible, is not worth it. We already have plenty of people who join voluntarily, and in boot camp or somewhere else along the line, decide they made a wrong choice. Suddenly the tons of money spent training them goes down the drain. It's all the people who make it through training and complete their service honorably that justify these losses. Source, wearethemoney.com. Harm 4. A draft is basically indentured servitude. People who serve today feel like they're overworked and underpaid. When the government is faced with absorbing tons of money lost due to wasted training expenses, where do you think the cuts will start? If you felt the sharp pain in your wallet, then you already know. Source, wearethemoney.com. Observation 3, the plan. Mandates. The negatives team plan will not work because we have stated the military draft causes people to be less effective in aiding the military and could be more of a hindrance than assistance. Not to mention the fact that the people are supposed to have free will and not be forced to put their lives at risk because the government decided to get into some fight with another country. Agency, the USA and the federal government. Funding, state tax revenue and government funds. Enforcement, the US military. Observation 4, advantages. Advantage 1, more free will. A military draft eliminates the concept of personal freedoms. The idea of having freedom is rooted in the belief that making your own decisions is better than having someone dictate your own choices. A military draft means that a person's liberty is placed on hold, so that the independence of other people receive protection because of their military service. By having no draft, people's free will be restored. Source, futureworking.com. Advantage 2, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence states that people should have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the military draft doesn't allow this to happen. It takes away the life of men who want to live and not fight to the death. It takes away the liberty by forcing people to join the military without giving them the liberty of choosing not to join the military. Source, the Declaration of Independence. Advantage 3, no draft riots. The United States first instituted military conscription during the American Civil War. As the war entered in its 3rd season, Congress, in need of more manpower for the Union Army, passed the Civil War Military Draft Act of 1863. The act called for registration of all males between the ages of 20 and 45, yet the obligation fell mostly on the poor. Wealthier men could afford to be could afford to hire a substitute to take their place in the draft, or pay a $300 fine for draft exemption. An enormous sum of money at the time. This controversial provision sparked civil unrest and draft riots. The most destructive were the New York draft riots. At least 119 people died in the riots, which spanned 3 days in July of 1863. In conclusion, both me and my partner encourage you to stand against the negative team's resolution. We have proven beyond a doubt that the military draft is more than useless and goes against the Declaration of Independence, as well as other laws in the United States of America. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Amelia? That's a Kobe Team A1C.
It's just here.
Oh. I still need it. So, can I please have a copy of your A1C?
There is no copy.
Then can I please have the computer?
Sure.
Thank you.
I need to have that though.
He doesn't need it. You can go up to it.
Okay.
You never copy.
Can you restate your resolution?
The resolution?
Yeah.
The resolution for our team is getting rid of the military draft, or having no military draft.
Okay. And then, so you said that we're wasting pointless money on the military draft. Do you know exactly how much we'd be wasting?
No, I do not know the exact amount.
And then what is free will? Since you've used free will so many times.
Free will is it pretty much states it right there. It's free will.
So you don't know.
It's being able to choose for yourself what you believe you should be able to do.
Okay. And then where does that definition come from?
I did not get a definition from a dictionary.
So
I don't have the.
Oh, okay. So
or
you're
anything.
All right. And then what is liberty?
Liberty is the freedom of choosing your own or making your own decisions without hindrance.
And your source?
I read that in Oxford dictionaries.
Okay. And then can I use this really quick? please read Article 4? Or not Article 4, your harms. 4, can you just please read the first advantage of?
Yes, more free will. A military draft eliminates the concept of personal freedom. The idea of having freedom is rooted in the belief that making your own decisions is better than having someone dictate your choices. A military draft means that a person's liberty is placed on hold so that the independence of other people might receive protection because of their military service. By having no draft, people's free will would be restored. Source, futureofworking.com.
Okay, so then you said, actually, I have no further questions.
You share your computer.
I'm like, yeah.
They sure?
Yes.
Are you on this?
No.
Never mind. Sarah.
I explained that, right?
You have 5 minutes altogether.
I can use that.
I have a copy of your,
You don't get a copy of our NOC. It's not made. It's a thing on the fly. Thank you.
What?
We don't have it in.
don't even know what it is.
Bro,
No, I know what he asked. He asked for a copy of my.
we literally just gave you the whole computer.
Yeah, because you're affirmative. We get your affirmative, you don't get our negative. How do they work?
Printing copies of it.
Yeah.
Copies of your stuff? Your stuff.
No, her stuff is moving. Yes.
Guys. Okay.
Sarah, when you go up, you can hand them their,
They will see
their,
that.
Sarah,
You can,
you can hand them their computer back if you want them.
Are the judges ready? Timer ready?
Opposing team ready.
yes.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hawthorne, and my co-counsels Elsa Harmon and Mason Schaefer stand against the resolution of abolishing the military draft. Quote, the military draft from 1948 until 1973, during both peace times and periods of conflict, men were drafted to fill vacancies in the armed forces, which would not be filled through, which would be filled through voluntary means. Instruction authority that expired in 1973 by the Selective Service System, but it still remains in standby to support all volunteer forces in case of emergency. ss.gov. Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. The Republic should form a government and shall protect each other from every invasion. Observation 1. We accept their definitions. Observation 2. Harms. Their first harm says that it go against the will of the people, but it is an equitable way to require public service. When a military draft, quote, when the military draft is in place, then it becomes an equitable reproach of requiring service in the armed force. Specific classes of individuals are less likely to invade the fundamental civic responsibilities with this approach, although there will be exceptions for higher education and medical conditions. It isn't as easy to purchase your way out of service when the draft is in place. That means it is easier for everyone to see each other as fellow countrymen instead of separating one another because of our own unique demographic. Futureofworking.com. Their second harm will be, but it is our responsibility to our countries and allies. A draft communicates the seriousness of a country's commitment. Joining NATO might send the message to Russia or other prerogatives that we have allies of the country, but then failing to have a military in place to protect our borders communicates that we take security less seriously. Instituting conscripts makes it easier to reaffirm commitments in international stage to every ally, giving pause to those who might think about doing the first strike. Futureofworking.com. Number 3, the draft makes sure that you serve your nation. But it protects us. It creates a body of reserves and argument of the current military. When a country institutes a military draft, then it is creating a series of personal replacements that can be immediately served when needed. It provides a large number of highly trained reserves and can augment the fighting force with this experiment. This advantage also allows for a quicker reinforcement during mobilization. Futureworking.com. Observation 3, the plan. Our mandate is to keep the military draft as it is, in standby and only needed when emergencies happen in the U.S., such as war. Our agency is the legislative branch. Our funding will be taxes, and our enforcement is the selective service system that will come out when it is comes out in times of emergency to draft. Observation 4, advantages. People will come together. Advantage 2, it is our responsibility to other countries and allies. As America is one of the leading countries, we have allies that need protection, and we are their protection. Advantage 3, we protect ourselves more than if we just had our current military, as there are more people in it to protect us. In conclusion, people will have unity and responsibilities to our other countries and allies, as well as the draft will protect us as there are more people. I now stand ready for cross-examination. Yeah, but you did the A1C, so you're crossing me. You're the first cross.
I know, come here. So you know. Ryan. Same thing, same shirt.
Okay, so can I please hear your first harm?
First harm, unity. It is an equitable way to require public service. When the military draft is in place, then it becomes an equitable approach to requiring service in the armed forces. Specific classes of individuality are less likely to invade the fundamental civic responsibilities with this approach. Although there would be exceptions for higher education or medical conditions. It isn't as easy to purchase your way out of the draft when it is in place. That means it is so everyone can see each other as fellow countrymen instead of separating one another because of their unique demographic. Futureworking.com. Advantage 1, this is advantage 1 that people will come together, and that, but it is an advantage. Our advantage would be that there is a way to require public service.
And why are you wanting to require public service?
Because it brings people together. Okay, a nation.
What about the people who do not want to?
Okay, then don't live in this nation. If you don't want to protect this nation, if you
So
want
you're just gonna kick everybody out of our nation?
No, if you don't want it protected, if you're not gonna fight for your own freedom, why should you have freedom?
Because everyone is entitled to a certain amount of freedom in their rights.
You're
The
entitled.
Declaration
Okay, by
of
the Declaration of
Independence
Independence.
says that we have
Also, in the
the right to
Constitution,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of
in
happiness.
the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, it says that the Republic should form a government and shall protect each other from invasions.
That does not necessarily mean you must risk your life just for protecting certain lives of random people you've never even met in your life.
So that's selfish.
Alright, no further questions.
The judges ready? Timer?
Yeah.
Opposing team?
Yes.
Go. My partner, Ryan Martin, and I, Victor Nascimento, both stand against the resolution. The United States should reinstitute a mandatory military draft. Observation 1, definitions. War, a state or period of fighting between states or nations. Merriam-Webster.com. Draft, compulsory recruitment for military service, Oxford Languages. Mandatory, required by a law or rule. Source, Merriam-Webster.com. Observation 2, harms. Harm 1, loss of time. Opponents of mandatory military service also often claim that people lose too much time which they could spend on their education or their career. If your dream was to become a doctor or a lawyer and you were forced to draft into war and you had to fight a whole war, and if you come back alive, wouldn't you be a little too old to do something? You're never too old to do something, but you could have had a better chance. It could have been at a younger moment in time of your life to strive. In fact, mandatory military service will take away some precious time from people, and people who have to take part in those military operations may suffer from a career disadvantage compared to the people who are able to attend college right after they finish school. Source, environmentalcoscience.com. Harm 2, military may suffer from a bad image. Due to lack of motivation of many people who are forced into compulsory military service, the whole military might get a bad image. For instance, if you force people who do not want to work in the military into those mandatory services, chances are that they will report quite badly about the military to their family and friends, and the overall image of the military will greatly suffer due to that, which in turn may result in a lack of professional military workers in the long run. Hence, it may make more sense to make military service a voluntary construct for those who want it, so that the people who are motivated enter the military. In turn, the overall image of the military would likely become much better. Source, environmentalcoscience.com. Forcing people into things they don't want is often not a good idea. In general, forcing people into things that they do not like and want to do has never been a good idea in the history of mankind. We all become good at things we really like since we want to do those things. There's a motivation inside of you to strive to do something that you are pushing yourself towards to do. If you do not want to do something, on the other hand, will there be a strive? Will there be a motivation? Will there be a will to do it unless somebody is commanding you to? There's a great difference in between somebody who wants to and somebody who doesn't. In turn, we will often be quite bad at things we don't like since we lack motivation to carry out those tasks. The same concept can be applied to mandatory military services. If we force people into military services, people who don't like this kind of work will not be motivated at all and will be not willing to learn and use their time in an efficient manner. Hence, we might want to refrain from forcing people into things they do not like and give them the freedom of choice regarding which social service they want to join instead. Source, environmentalcoscience.com. Harm 4, mental problems. Since military officers often apply high levels of pressure on participants, some people may not be able to deal with this kind of treatment and may develop mental problems over time. For instance, depression is something that is actually rather common in the military, since people are not able to switch gears and adapt to the rough tone and the lack of mercy that is implied when joining the military. Source, environmentalcoscience.com. Mandates. The agency is U.S. Congress. Funding is state tax revenue and government funds. Enforcement, the Department of Justice, the DOJ. Advantage 1, an all-volunteer force is much better. As stated before, our military is as good as it is because the people who serve choose to be there. They want to do a good job. Furthermore, it's a good feeling to know that you're doing the hard work that not everyone is cut out for. By enacting a draft, we would lose the very thing that makes the military great: pride. Source, wearethemighty.com. Advantage 2, no draft dodgers. Draft resistance in the United States reached its peak during Vietnam War. By the late 1967, casualties in Vietnam had reached 15,058 killed and 109,527 wounded. The Vietnam War was costing the United States approximately $25 billion per year, and disillusionment was beginning to spread beyond college campuses to make greater sections of the tax-paying public. Each month, as many as 40,000 young men were drafted into service. Some men evaded the draft by failing to register with the Selective Service System or by fleeing the country. According to Canadian immigrant statistics, as many as 30,000 draft dodgers may have left the United States for Canada during Vietnam. In conclusion, there would be less people in jail, less unnecessary war casualties, and less illegal immigrants in countries such as Canada. Young people's lives won't be at high risk. Imagine if your son, your dad, or any of your loved ones were drafted in the military and never came back home. How does that make you feel? Though you might not like it, or you might not like to think about it, part of the process is risking young people's lives. Casualties don't just happen in actual combat or in the battlefield, but also during training and the like. Mandatory military service, which normally enlists able-bodied young people, puts the next generation in serious harm, and at worst, death. Cheatography.com. Conclusion. What counts is not necessarily the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. That goes with what I've been saying about volunteering. Jen. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Going off of this quote, a large military made up of many people who have been drafted and don't want to fight is possibly worse than a slightly smaller military made up solely of men and women who truly want to fight and are true heroes. Thank you for your time, and I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Ready? Timer ready? Opposing team ready?
Yes.
Okay. Can you please restate your first harm in your 1 AC? Not your 2.
1 AC?
Or 1 AC. Because they should be the same as your 2 AC. Or you're just bringing in new information, which is disqualified.
It goes against the will of the people.
Okay, what is your 2 AC's first harm?
Loss of time.
How many people have mental issues in the military?
That is beyond my knowledge, but it is a great portion.
Do you know how many people have mental illnesses that are not in the military?
A lot.
The statistics are the same as people that are in the military and out of the military have mental issues, if you're wondering. Do you know how long they're in boot camp for, like trained?
That is also beyond my knowledge.
They have 6 weeks of training before they go into war. Do you think they need training before they go?
Before they, of course. Who takes a random civilian off the street to fight a war?
Exactly. We're putting them in boot camp to make sure that their skills are to par. I'm done.
Great. Mason, you would be up, but he was doing it. Are you doing that part?
You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah, just say what you do. Doing so well, 'cause they got we all have You guys have 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
Just English and Jason. So just say literally English and Jason what you just said. That's what I'm not just like something and I'm cross. Are the judges ready? If I'm ready? Yes. President ready?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Elsa Hornet, and I stand with my co-counsel Sarah Hawthorne and Mason Schaefer. We stand that the military draft should stay in place. Quote, the military draft from 1948 until 1973, during both peacetime periods of conflict, men were drafted to fill vaccines in armed forces, which could not be filled through voluntary means. Induction authority expired in 1973, but the selective service system remained in existence and standby to support all volunteer force in case of emergency. Source.ss.gov. Quote. The draft today has been approved by making the draft when in times of extreme emergencies. So we stand that the draft should be for emergencies and not just went there to get vaccinated from the military. We accept the opposing team's definitions. It is a choice and it's unity. It gives the system. It is an equitable way to require public service. When the military draft is in place, when it becomes an equitable approach to requiring services in armed forces, specific classes of individuals are less likely to invade their fundamental civic responsibilities with this approach. Although there would be expectations for higher education or medical conditions or exceptions, it isn't easy to purchase your way out of service draft in place. That means it's easier for everyone to follow the country instead of separating one another because of their unique demographics. Source futureofworking.com. Creates responsibility to other countries and allies. The draft communicates the seriousness of the situation. Joining NATO might send a message to Russia or any others that would have allies as a country, but then failing to have a military in place to protect your boundaries, saying we do not have enough soldiers, it communicates, the security. Not having a military draft would, communicate that we do not have enough security and we're taking it less seriously. Instituting conscription makes it easier to reaffirm the commitments on the international stage to every ally, giving pause to those who might be thinking about protective first strike. It has protection, security of the nation. It creates a body of and reserves and can helps the current military. When a country institutes a military draft, then it is creating seriousness of a personnel replacement and can immediately serve when needed. It provides a large number of highly trained residents who can fight the forces with their training. The advantage also shows for a quicker reinforcement during the mobilization. Source futureofworking.com. Our mandate is the same. We stand that we should keep the military draft the same, and I am ready for cross-examination.
Judges ready? Timer ready?
Yep.
Opposing team?
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned, you said highly trained reservists, right?
Oh, yes.
How long is boot camp again?
That is beyond my knowledge.
Oh, really? Because it said before 6 weeks.
It does say 6 weeks.
You believe taking somebody off the street and training them for 6 weeks will be enough to make a soldier to be ready to fight a whole war?
Yes.
You do?
Maybe not full soldier, but volunteer. Someone should be willing to fight for the country.
Is draft volunteering?
They're volunteering?
Is the draft a volunteer? Is it an act of volunteering?
No, but anyone should be willing to fight for the country.
No further questions.
Sarah, are you gonna be doing
And then she's gonna do the second one. I can do it. Can I do it? You guys have 15 seconds. You can do that. You can do
Oh, the judge is ready. Timer ready. Opposing team. So. Okay. The Republic should form a government and shall rape each other from invasion. Constitution. Constitution. Congress.gov. Choice. It is equitable way to require public service. When a military draft is in place, then it becomes an equitable approach to requiring services in the armed forces. Specific classes of individuals are less likely to evade the fundamental civic responsibilities with this approach. Although there would be expansions for higher education or medical conditions, it is an it isn't as easy to purchase your way out of the service. When a draft is in place, that means it is easier for everyone to see each other as fellow countrymen instead of separating one another because of unique demographics. Futureworking.com. Responsibility to the other countries and allies. The draft communications the seriousness of countries' communications. Joining NATO might send a message to Russia or other protectives, productivities that you have allies as a country, but then failing to have a military in the place to protect your borders communications that you take security less seriously, and instituting conscriptions makes it easier to refer communications on an international stage to every ally, giving pause to those who might be thinking about a protective first strike. Protection. The security of a nation. It creates a body of reservation that can argument the current military. When a country institutes a military draft, then it is creating a series of personal replacements that can immediately serve when needed. It provides a larger number of highly trained reservations who can augment the fighting forces with their experiences. The advantages also for quicker reinforcement during mobilization. Futureworking.com. Oh. That's it.
I get a copy of that.
You don't get a copy of
Oh,
the
yeah.
negatives to anything. It's how debates work, I don't know, read the book.
And you're up.
Alright, is the timer ready?
Yes.
Judges ready?
Yeah.
Opposing team ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, the negative team has stated in their rebuttal that each person will be able to see each other as equal if we have the military draft. With the military draft, less and less people will be able to see each other at all. They also said that there would be more protection in this country. If we have the military draft, there will be less and less of a country to protect in the first place. Forcing people into doing things they don't want is never a good idea. We all become good at things that we really like since we want to do those things all the time and get plenty of experience to doing that. We will often be quite bad at things we don't like since we lack motivation to carry out those tasks. The government shouldn't control the people because it goes against their rights. We even have the Declaration of Independence stating that we have certain unalienable rights that should not be, that we also have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We should not be forced into doing something that goes against our free will. And risking our lives just because the government got into some bloody fight. That's all.
We have 3 minutes. Are the judges ready?
Yes.
Are we ready? No. Opposing team ready?
Hello, my name is Sarah Hoffman, and my co-counsels Elsa Harmon and Mason Schaefer stand against the resolution of abolishing the military draft. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution states that the Republic should form a government and shall protect each other from invasion. It will bring us unity. It is an It were a way to require public service. When a military draft is in place, it becomes an equitable approach to requiring service in the armed forces. Specific classes of individuality are less likely to invade the fundamental civics responsibility with this approach, although would be exceptions for higher education or medical conditions. It isn't as easy to purchase your way out of military service when there's a draft in place. That means that it's easier for everyone to see each other as fellow countrymen instead of separating one another through unique demographic. With more people, we will have more protection. Harm 2. It is our responsibility to other countries and allies, as one of the leading countries in the world. A draft communicates the seriousness of a country's commitments. Joining NATO might send a message to Russia or other provocators that we have allies as a country. But then failing to have a military in place to protect those borders communicates that we take security less seriously. Instituting conscripts makes it easier to reaffirm the commitments in international stage to every ally, giving pause to those who might be thinking of doing the first strike. It is our responsibility to other nations to protect them. If we do not have enough people in the military, we need to draft them in. The draft will protect us as a nation. It creates a body of reserves that can augment the current military. When a country institutes a military draft, then it is creating a series of personal requirements that are individually served when needed. It provides a larger number of highly trained reserves who can augment the fighting forces of their expertise. The advantage also allows for a quicker reinforcement during mobilization. Futureworking.com. We won't just send people in the military, we will train them first. The plan. Mandate is to keep the military draft the same and only in use when we are under national emergency, such as if we were put into a war. Agency, the legislative branch. Funding, taxes. Enforcement, the selective service system. In conclusion, it will bring unity to our country. What is a country if it is not unified? It brings responsibility to our country and people who live in it. If you are not willing to fight for your own freedom, why do you deserve it? And it will protect us. We need people to protect us in our nation. Thank you, I am done.
The Navy stands.
Good morning. Is the timer ready? Judges? Closing team?
Yeah.
It goes against the will of the people. There will be many more casualties. And the government shouldn't control the people because it goes against their rights. There will be more free will. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are bold words written in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence states that people should have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the military draft doesn't allow this to happen. It takes away the life of men who want to live and not fight to the death. Not all of us were built or made to fight. It takes away the liberty by forcing people to join the military without giving them the choice, giving them the liberty of choosing to not join the military. Source, the Declaration of Independence. Conclusion. Forcing people into things they don't want is often not a good idea. They mention it takes 6 weeks to train a person at boot camp after they enter selective service. That's practically a month and a half of training people who don't want to be there. Is that highly trained? Does that sound highly trained to you? An 18-year-old boy you probably picked up off the street, trained for a month and a half, and now he's going to be sent to war. We're talking about 18-year-old boys here who most likely die in a war or waste his or her potential to become something else. Have you ever thought that there might be someone out there who got drafted but could have changed the world with the potential and capabilities of their mind, but were forced to use their body as a sacrificial shield for the country? They could have changed the world, but they didn't, because they were brought in.